Hey all, this is Seth Apter. Thank you so much for joining me. I am really excited to bring you another interview in my In Conversation with series. This is a series of live interviews that I do with artist friends and sometimes artists that I don't really know that well. It's always exciting for me to have a chance to kind of talk more deeply with people who I admire and people that I like, and also people that I want to get to know. We are in for something special today, I promise you that. I love all my interviews, I really do, and I even have several of my interviewees that I know watch all the other interviews. So I'm not going to say these guys are my favorite, they are, but I'm not going to say that. And I just want you to know that today our guests are a couple, and I love interviewing couples. This is my third couple. I have interviewed in the past MB Shaw and John Shaw, Nick Bantock and Joyce Bantock. And today I am thrilled to be able to bring to you JJ and Danny Gregory. Now, I know those names probably mean a lot to all of you already. Danny and I go back many, many years. I was lucky enough to take a class with him in a period of time when he was not teaching much in person at the New York Open Center. And honestly, it was an incredible experience that kind of shifted directions for me. I always tell him that it almost didn't even matter if it was a drawing class. If we drew, which we did, it was more his approach, his style, his kind of dry humor, his wittiness, and the way he looks at the world that was well worth the time and expense of taking, I think it was a 9-week class. It was spectacular. JJ I met later, love her dearly. These two are amazing people. They have amazing things to say, and they've created something that's so important to me, many, many communities online, and we're going to hear all about them today. So rather than me introduce them anymore, I'm going to have them introduce themselves. So let's bring them in. And there they are.
Hello.
Hey, guys.
Hi there.
Hi.
So how about you guys introduce yourselves any way you want?
Sure. Should we introduce ourselves or should we introduce each other? I'll introduce JJ. This is
Love that.
JJ Gregory, who is she's my wife, but she's more importantly the COO of Sketchbook Skool, and she is she's a Phoenix native, which is where we live now, and she has a background in television production and in advertising. She helps things to run smoothly here at Sketchbook Skool. She manages our customers. She is my constant muse, and she manages Twiglet, our pug, who is the mascot of Sketchbook Skool. And she is an indispensable part of anything that I work on. She gives me perspective and clarity and keeps my ego in check. So it's good to have her around.
So JJ does all the challenging work while you kind of show up and do the fun stuff on camera.
I sit around looking good.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Sit around looking good.
That's me. That's my job.
If anyone's wondering why I keep turning my head, it's literally because we're sitting about 3 feet away from each other in the same room. So yeah, when Danny makes a yuck joke, I've gotta give him a hairy eyeball. So Danny Gregory, my adorable husband, is an amazing artist. Let's start there. Is an amazing author, has written something like 13 books. Incredible. He writes every day. He writes daily. He writes essays. He's an incredibly creative human, and he's also a very generous human. He's the founder of Sketchbook Skool, which is a creative community like no other, full of permission, full of encouragement. It's directed at people who oftentimes are not pursuing art as to become a professional or to have a gallery show or to be published in any way, but just to have a more meaningful life, to be a happier human, to be the best version of yourself, to help process trauma, grief, And somebody just put a link in. Thank you, Janine. But it's really a thing that we practice daily, being mindful and using art to help us experience joy, to see the world like an artist is to have a fuller, deeper, richer experience in every single thing that you do, even if it's just eating your breakfast. And one of his books is indeed called Art Before Breakfast. So we're on about breakfast here. We're breakfast peeps. But we collaborate with Seth. We collaborate with many talented artists around the world, and it's endlessly fascinating. And I am so fortunate to be a part of it.
That's us.
That's
Are
us.
adorable. So for those of you who have not watched an interview here with me before, one of the things that I like to share is that there is no preparation other than asking these guys to introduce themselves, asking them to maybe bring some work to share and show. Really, there's no plan. So they have no clue what we're going to talk about. And honestly, I do not either. You're more than welcome to leave questions and we will pick and choose which ones we ask. But I did want to ask a question because I think, Danny, I resonated with what you have put out in the world for a very long time. And I think over time, thinking about that, one of the reasons is because I think we, in some ways, have similar aspects of art that's important to us. And amongst that is this community and collaboration. And those words really came up a couple of times in those introductions. And you've created over the years many different amazing, thriving communities that truly make a difference. And I'm just curious if you have an answer to this, like where did the importance of community and collaboration come from, since so many artists really are somewhat more internal and self-directed in their work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I have to rewind a long way to talk about community because and this is before really I was even drawing, honestly. It was the first time I developed an online community. And that was in the mid-1990s, 1995 or 6. When my first wife, Patty, was disabled and paralyzed in an accident. And there was so much information we didn't know about dealing with paralysis. We just didn't know like what it was like to be in a wheelchair, 1,000 different things we had to deal with. And I set up a web page where I started to share resources that I'd found on the internet for stuff that was useful, wheelchair manufacturers, legal things, all different kinds of resources. And I just put them on this thing. And it started to attract people. And then people started talking in the comments and it became a community. And I realized and they started sharing information too. And I realized that is the power that we now take for granted, 30 years later about the internet. But there was a time when we weren't connected and you couldn't find people. And so when I started making art, and then I started a Yahoo group in 2003, this is really like ancient history. I wrote in on my dinosaur and we started talking about, again, because when I first started drawing in a sketchbook and I started doing illustrated journaling, it was really hard to find anybody else who did it. And so I thought back to my experience with the disabled audience or disabled community, that this was, likewise, how do I find people with this very niche interest? So the Yahoo group became an opportunity. And then there was also Flickr, which is another platform where it was the first opportunity to share images. And so that's what I started doing, was doing that there, connecting it. And slowly people started to kind of coalesce around it. And it became a really vibrant thing. And then eventually Facebook and so forth. So I think what it is if you have a niche interest you can always find other people who exist in that niche, no matter how small it is. You know, if you're 1 in a million, well, that means that there's still, you know, whatever it is, 100,000 other people on the planet who will fit into, is it 10,000 that are the same as you. So you can always find people like that. And when it comes to making art, sure, you can go to art school, you can go to gallery openings, you can go to all those kinds of things. But if you're an amateur like I am, if you're somebody who really, you know, has a lot of a lack of confidence around what you're doing, you don't want to be judged, you don't want to be around people who are too good, right? So finding an audience of people who are willing to make mistakes, to acknowledge them, you know, to learn from them, to share all that kind of stuff was a pretty small niche again. But as it turned out, it was actually a much larger niche than I thought. There were a lot of people who felt like I did, like they wanted to make art, but they didn't necessarily want to, you know, put it out there. But I think sharing your art is so important for a number of reasons. One is that it helps you to learn. You get feedback, you know, you see your work through other people's eyes. It allows you to get confidence. It gives you a goal. For me, a lot of times, knowing that I'm putting stuff on the internet is a reason to make it sometimes, you know, because I think there's a lot of time where, you know, like somebody wrote to me yesterday and she said, I have like a whole closet full of drawings. What should I do with them? And I was like, I don't know, scan them and put them on the internet. Like, what are they doing sitting in your closet? They're not doing anybody any good there until somebody comes along one day and throws them away. So get them out there, share them, and you'll get feedback. And a lot of times we're afraid to share them because they're not good, quote unquote. But who cares? Put them out there anyway. See what happens because of that. And, you know, you'll make friends, you'll get lessons, you'll learn new stuff, you'll learn about new materials. There's all kinds of things that happen by having, you know, a little bit of nerve, have the guts to share it, even if it sucks. That's kind of my short answer.
The short-winded.
Short answer. Sorry about
No,
that.
really
You
wasn't
know,
short-winded
put a mic
answer.
in front of me and it never ends.
Well, we are doing an interview, so this is okay.
Fair enough.
No, I agree with you totally. I think that, you know, the internet has brought along some negative things, but it certainly brought along so many positive things, and this ability to connect and to share, and as a result to really grow, both
Right.
as a person and an artist. It's dramatic, and it's interesting when you reference Yahoo groups and you give these dates, like, you know, the ancient times of 1995. I think legitimately, by definition, I think that is vintage at this point. It's like almost 30 years. So, you know, your vintage groups had power, and your groups in the present, and pretty soon it'll be an antique. But I
That's
have
what
a
I
feeling
aspire
that,
to be.
yeah,
A classic, if you will.
a classic. I like that better. See, there's the JJ. I like that. I am also curious, JJ, in terms of you being behind the scenes. What do you do in terms of classes? Like, have you taken some of the classes in Sketchbook Skool? Are you sketching?
Oh, sure.
Have a-
Yeah, absolutely. I am, you know, a forever amateur. I am really, how do I say it? My style is very primitive. I think that is easy, but that's, you know, it pleases me greatly. It's not a thing that I'm endeavoring to change, but I find the experimentation is, you know, as cheesy as it sounds, the journey is the destination. So I'm kind of always making little things, you know, even like in the marginalia, like of my little notebooks, I'm constantly taking notes. I sadly find myself in meetings often all day long, but it's just, it helps you in terms of your memory, you know, the neural pathways, opening up the part of your brain that connects to your hand. I think it is almost like going to a spa. It's like, it gives you a brain refresh in a way. So the classes that I enjoy the most are the ones that are kind of the most off the wall and challenging. I think honestly, your classes, like for me, collage was very intimidating. It's very intimidating, and I found so much joy once I tried it. I don't I don't profess to be a person who tackles collage all that often, but I love having it in my toolkit. I love knowing that it's there to reference. And it's funny because now I sort of see collages everywhere where I didn't before. It's like now they present themselves to me if I go into a coffee shop, or I notice them online more. And it's just, I love things like that. I love that being curious is just full of rewards.
I would also say, I mean, JJ's also has an incredible singing voice and is a great singer. She's also, I mean, I think her biggest passion is cooking. We have something like 5,000 cookbooks in our house. And I'm the obvious beneficiary of that. But I think part of what we try and do at Sketchbook Skool, I think, is to say it isn't all just about drawing. It's really about thinking of yourself as an artist, as a creative person. And so many of the things that we talk about with drawing, I find are applicable to writing. They're clearly applicable to music. They can be applicable to cooking, to really any form of self-expression. Being authentic, being willing to take mistakes, experiment, share, all those kinds of things, they apply to all aspects of life. So,
but it's also problem solving.
Problem solving.
Right? It's like at the heart of it, it's problem solving, which is, all day, every day. This is what we're doing as, living, breathing creatures, is solving problems big and small. And I think having a, outside of the box approach, comes from putting yourself in a position to try things that make you uncomfortable. So going to classes where you think that's not for me, you may learn something that helps you solve a problem, in the days or weeks or years ahead.
I often describe mixed media as problem solving, because you're presented with a problem literally every time you put a layer on, because it often goes in directions you had no clue it would go to, and then you have to figure out what to do next. And I also like just the analogy about life, because I think that's so true. I've talked to a lot of teachers, and we all know that we might be teaching a specific course and a specific content, but sometimes it feels like you could change what you're teaching to anything else, because what it's really about is trying to help people take risks and instill some confidence in them, letting them be more comfortable to take chances, to go a little further than they might have gone before. And, I think it is a big life lesson. And absolutely. I will say that I think with many of your books, Danny, with the classes that I took with you and with your communities, I think that's just, it feels like that's the underlying bigger piece, that this is about so much more than just picking up a pencil.
Yeah, I think techniques. I mean, that's when I said earlier, I haven't really taken classes. I mean, I feel like when we started Sketchbook Skool, I did it from a point of ignorance, because I'm not trained in any way about art making. But I was interested in it because I'm not specifically interested in technical skills. I'm interested in freeing my mind and forming some kind of a spiritual connection that comes through making art. I think if we look at the whole world and what we've been going through for the last 3 years, we experienced something that was completely unexpected, and we didn't have any experience to draw upon, right? And for a lot of us, it was a terrible fear that the world was broken, that we were never going to go back to the way we were, that everything was changed. We didn't know how to deal with it. But I think the creative response was, what are we going to do today? What are we going to do now going forward? How are we going to deal with this? How are we going to make something of it? And I think we survived because ultimately human beings are creative. And we were willing to, try stuff out, willing to still be optimistic in the face of disaster. And to think of solutions. That's what we are as a species, and we should never feel stuck. Always feel like we can try and push forward.
I think in a lot of ways, creativity blossomed more in the 2-3 years stretch of what we just went through than it had in many, many years before that, where people really had an opportunity to kind of get off the treadmill and do something. And so many people chose to be creative, which was amazing, because I think it also strengthened the community in a way that made a huge difference for so many people.
Right. And we also realize that creativity doesn't have to be a job. Like you don't have to become a professional artist. You don't have to sell your stuff. You don't have to open a store. You can just do it because it's a part of life. It's a lesson that every 6-year-old knows, which is you make stuff because that's what we do. Make things, we draw, we write stories, we sing songs. That's who we are, and it's built into us. And so don't leave it to the professionals. Seriously. And you might do something that's way cooler than they do, but that's not the point. It's just have fun doing it. Yeah.
I mean, do we want to talk about technology? Because I do think that, the creativity that we've seen, exponential creativity we've seen in the last few years, and unbelievably fascinating, like light years speed improvements in technology that are happening every day that are making our lives, that are going to change humanity. And I think that it's interesting how those things are on a parallel path. They rely on each other. They're sort of flip sides of the same coin, right?
Right. We're willing to try new things. I mean, look at Zoom that we're on right now, right? 3-4 years ago, most people who use Zoom now would never have used it. Now we're completely comfortable. And so I can spend hours a day sitting here in my room talking to people and friends all around the world. That's an incredible thing. And it also means new ideas and new opportunities. We have things that are going on with artificial intelligence now that are going to massively change so many things about our lives. It's social media. Social media is changing right now, right? With the implosion of Twitter, with whatever the hell is going on with Facebook. There's just a lot of things that are going on that are changing. So we kind of gotten used to this thing and now it's changing again. So I think a lot of us may not have felt comfortable with technology in the past. Now we're used to having Apple Watches and carrying phones around with us and, having Netflix. It's becoming more and more of who we are. And if you look back how recent these changes are, and yet they are probably the most profound changes that we as a species have gone through, and it's happening in such a compressed way. So we in a single generation are experiencing the kind of transformation that in the past would have taken 10 or 20 generations to experience, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're so lucky to be alive.
It's an amazing time to be alive, but it's also tough. It's traumatic. It is dislocating. And, that doesn't mean we should be afraid of it, but it's a challenge.
I once went to a psychic. I don't know if some people have opinions. And she was hearing a litany of complaints that I had about various things that were causing me to be fearful and anxiety and blah, 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 blah. And she said, and I said, it just seems like the world is worse off than it's ever been. And she said, it's the exact opposite. She said, all of the souls are like clogging the entry point. Like everyone wants to be alive in this time. Like it's just stuck with me. And sometimes when I feel like something really dreadful is going on, I recall that. And it's like all of the souls all want to be here now. And we are here now. So
that's why it's so hard to find a parking space.
That's a powerful phrase for sure. I mean, the opportunities that we have that just didn't exist practically yesterday are really mind-blowing. I often, no exaggeration, wake up and think, how did I live my life before this? Like, I can't quite even remember exactly, like, what did I do? Like, how did I fill those 10 hours off the computer? And happily, I can't remember it because there's a part of me who thinks I might want to go back to that if I could remember.
And we did at the beginning of the pandemic, right? At the beginning of the pandemic, we suddenly felt like, it was like
sprouting sourdough again.
Yes, exactly. That's why everyone was taking up knitting and embroidery.
And I think it's interesting for what you do, for what we do. We use digital technology to encourage people to do analog creations, right?
Yep.
We're making stuff with our hands. We're making stuff with paper. It doesn't take away from that. Digital technology isn't replacing those things. It's giving us new reasons to do it, new ways of sharing it, and new ways of learning about it. And that's really exciting too. You know, I'm
I'd
sure.
gone to a trade show, I want to say maybe 10 years ago, and there was a panel of experts, and the experts were, I think there were 5 people. I would say, I'm not very good at this, but 4 of them were probably 50 plus, and one of them maybe was 30. And the whole idea of this panel was, is it going to be digital? Is it going to be analog? How do we live our life in sort of the craft art world? And the 4 people had their say, and the younger person's like just patiently waited and said, people, like, it's already here. This shouldn't even be a question. We are living in both worlds right now, as we will be. And you kind of quieted the room for a second, and it made so much sense. But I do think that when you grow up without it, it's a very different life you're living than when you grow up with it. And
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I remember my son learning to type when he was 3 or 4. I mean, he just picked up keyboard. He seemed to instinctively know how to do all this stuff. You know, he's lived with it his whole 28 years. You know, it was for us and for other people. I mean, I'm almost 83, and I think
you still can't type.
and I still can't type.
And you're right.
Fortunately, I have a lot of people who take dictation, but I have that steno machine. But yeah, but I think I don't think you're ever too old to learn how to use a tool, right? And I think we see it in the craft world. We see people who are perfectly willing to learn a new knitting stitch, or willing to learn, you know, how to use a new cutting edge. But there's things to learn all the time, right?
Mhm.
I think you get old when you stop learning. You know, I think when you're afraid to take on new things, to have new challenges, you know, but there's no reason, there's no age you have to stop at it. I mean, Picasso continued to be innovative, as did Matisse, you know, well into their 80s or 90s. We can continue making new stuff. I mean, just try, or ask somebody to help you, but we can do it. And we all learn to use Zoom. We all learn to use Facebook.
Yeah, all those people need to do is go to Sketchbook Skool. Now,
Aw,
I know the 3 of us
shameless
know about
plug.
Sketchbook Skool, and we also know about Spark. I just wondered, because I have to imagine there's probably 1 or 2 people out there that don't, and they just happen to be here today. So could you just explain what this community is and what the difference between the 2 are?
Sure. So Sketchbook Skool started 8 years ago, and we began by teaching online courses, which at the time were an unfamiliar thing. So online art courses, and each course that we made had each week a different teacher. So we would have 6 different teachers from around the world in a course, and we filmed them beautifully. They were very nice. They became very popular. Over the years, we developed to produce lots and lots of courses, but we also developed a big community. We started here on Facebook. Now we have our own private network that's called the Schoolyard. So people get together every day and they share what they've made. They share recommendations. They share life news, all kinds of things. It's a very vibrant community. And then about 2 years ago, coincidentally with the beginning of the pandemic, it just happened that we started our membership program, which uses Zoom technology, stuff that we're on right now, to teach classes. And we teach 2 to 3 hours of drawing and painting and mixed media classes every single day. So that's about 20 something hours a week. And so we have people.
Live.
Yes, these are live classes, but they're all recorded as well. And so a lot of people come to them live, but also a lot more people watch the recordings, and then they make art and they share it in the schoolyard. And they're people who, you know, are like us. They started out as just interested in doing it, and they've just learned a huge amount from it. And now they make an awful lot of art because they have this inspiration and this incentive every day to learn something new from different artists. We have lots of different teachers. Seth is one of them. I'm one of them. And it's really great because you're seeing the same people, you're seeing new people, maybe seeing no people at all because you're watching a recording, but there are people from all over the world. And it's really, because it's live, you can ask the teacher questions, you can show what you've done and have a conversation about it. You can talk to other people in the class, you can share resources. So it's really dynamic and energetic, and people are utterly addicted to it. They come and they think, well, I'm not sure how this is going to fit into my lives. And now they're structuring their life around it.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say Spark was created for people who were ready to make a commitment. You know, it's really not for the casual user, and it's not for everybody all of the time,
Right.
you know, and we do other things besides Spark. We have workshops, we have a la carte classes, we do a lot of things, but Spark is really when maybe you have a project and you need accountability. You know, on some level, it's coaching. We have programming like how to set and keep a creative goal. You know, little mini seminars that go for 6 weeks is sort of like all of the wisdom that comes from, you know, various instructors that we have who have been coaches. How do they condense that and deliver it in a really powerful capsule, you know, a like payoff. Like anybody who commits themselves to this is going to have a payoff. And, you know, that's, I think there aren't that many other things out there that are like it.
Yeah. I think when it comes to online courses, when we started, it was a new thing. Now, to be honest, there's a lot of places you can take online art courses. There's nowhere where you can really show up to an art school, basically in your house. And, you know, you can study techniques, you can study particular problems, you can study, there's also sort of psychological motivational stuff that we do as well. We have a class that's combines yoga and drawing. We draw animals, we draw urban sketching, we draw people. My class is called Box of Chocolates because each time you never know what you're going to get. And, you know, today we drew horses at a rodeo. Last week we talked about how to set up a studio. It's just all over the place. It's kind of just a way of having art be a regular part of your life. Some people go on and they you know, publish books, they have gallery shows, they do projects, but a lot of people, you know, they just do it because they love it, because it's really fun. And you're with a bunch of other people who are doing it.
I mean, one of our instructors, who I think is really interesting, she was just a burning desire to draw faces, learn to do portraiture. And she did it every single day. And now she's an instructor, and that's her class, just drawing faces. But she progressed from a true novice to now is, you know, I mean, her portraits are just
amazing,
crazy good, so inspiring.
I love that.
Yeah, she put in the wrench time, as we like to say.
Wrench time.
Which you have to do. One of the things that I just want to mention, because I love that you call it Spark for so many reasons. But I think there might be people out there in the world who think it's called, you know, the bigger picture is Sketchbook Skool, that this is only for people who want to sketch. And I just want to say, as somebody who's teaching something completely different and who has taken classes from other instructors who teach things that are different than that if you're at all hesitant to check it out, don't be, because it's about so much more than sketching, both in terms of technique and, as Danny said, and both Danny and JJ said, it's sort of about the bigger picture things as well. But there's so much to be found there. And for those who are in my Facebook group, which is completely different, but it's a community, I will say it's one of the few places I've found that has that same feeling, where people are kind and supportive, and there's nobody there to trash you. And there's a lot of love, and you get to recognize the names and people's styles. And you do, when you spend time, you see people grow in terms of their work, and you get feedback, and you get genuine feedback, not just the word awesome all the time. It's really worth something. So, you know, definitely check it out if you haven't. Janine is putting links in here, and when this goes up on Facebook and YouTube, I'll have the link there as well for you to check it out. It's kind of a special place, and I'm truly honored to have been asked. You guys have created something extra special.
Thank you, Seth, and thank you, Janine.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what we hope to accomplish with it. And so I'm glad to hear you say that. And I think it's interesting what you say about sketching. We're called Sketchbook Skool because this is about making art in a sketchbook, all kinds of art, and drawing is certainly part of it, but writing, I write a lot in my sketchbook. We have a writing class, Writer's Corner, where we have writers prompts and we do writing. I think what I want to change about the world is I don't want creative people to be afraid to draw. I think there's a lot of people who end up in other media or in, doing other forms of creativity because they feel like they can't draw. And what I want to say is you can learn to draw. Anybody can learn to draw. I taught Seth to draw. Anybody can draw, and don't let it hold you back. The analogy I make is I never was taught properly to swim when I was a kid. And so for my whole adult life, whenever we would go on vacation, I was always afraid to go anywhere near swimming, even as a grown-up. And it was like just one of those things, yeah, you can get away with it. There are ways around it, but why? Why not just learn? And you can do it, honestly. And everybody says, I can't draw. And my response is, you just don't draw. And I will get you drawing. We'll draw on a regular basis.
It will force you to draw.
We'll make it fun. It's not about, I hate the word practice also, because practice, it's like playing scales or something. You don't have to practice. You just have to draw. Just have to come up with fun ways to do it and get you over your anxiety about not drawing well. Of course, you can't draw well. You don't draw. Once you start drawing well, draw.
I've shared that gospel because you really taught me, that I just remember in the class that I took so many years ago with you, somebody asked about how do you get better, and you're like, you just do it. You just draw, and you keep drawing, you keep drawing. And I remember an exercise that frightened me to no end toward the end of the class, where you had three of us, I guess not paired off, tripled off, and we each had a sketchbook and we each had a pen, because you're a believer in pen, not pencil, for drawing. And we, at the same time, each had to draw the person to our left, the portrait, and then finish, and then draw the next person and finish, and then continue like that. And honestly, I sweated that so much. But in the three drawings, I probably have them somewhere. Literally in that exercise, the third drawing was 1,000% better than the first drawing. Just doing those three and taking that risk, being forced to take that risk, taught me a life lesson that's just so important. And I hope that, I know you've passed that to many people, but anybody who's listening who hasn't heard that, there's just so much worth in the risk of doing something that you're afraid of, in life in general, certainly in drawing, but especially now when you're watching on Zoom and no one's even seeing what you do. Take the leap. It's the least you can do. You'll be doing yourself a favor.
If you draw and somebody looks over your shoulder and sees what you're doing, probably the thing they'll say is, I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to go, what are you, an artist now?
Who do you think you are?
The voice in your head might say that, but nobody's going to say that. And
can you briefly talk about the monkey?
Yeah, so we all have a voice in our head. I call it the monkey because I like to point out that it's not me. The voice in my head is not me. It's this other thing. And in my case, I think of it as like this little, like Gollum, it's like a little miserable monkey, afraid, sitting in the dark, worried about change. That's the thing that your voice is trying to stop you from trying new things that could be dangerous. Don't eat that food. You don't know where it's been. Don't go outside. There could be some danger there. And we need to take risks. We need to do new things. We need to advance. And so we need to learn to manage that voice. You can't eliminate it. And the only people who don't have it are sociopaths. So if you don't have one, go and see a parole officer immediately. But otherwise, it's a normal thing to have. And we as creative people have it even more because our job as creative people is to do new and different things, right? We're supposed to take risks. We're supposed to go and that voice is going to say to you, don't do it, don't try. And so we have to learn to manage it. And that's a lot of what I and focused on, primarily because I have a really big monkey. And I wrote a book.
Particularly chatty.
I wrote a book called Shut Your Monkey, which is about this whole phenomenon, where it comes from, and some suggestions on how to manage it. Can't kill it, you can just shut it.
I think it's really important for people to realize too, that just because you get better at art, or perhaps more recognized at art, or art becomes your profession, that does not stop the monkey. And in some cases, the monkey just throws, because I think the monkey gets scared. But yeah, so, it's, I love that book. And, it's not about figuring out a way to get rid of the monkey. It's just how you manage the monkey, as Janine said.
Yeah, because the monkey can be your friend too, can be helpful. It can stop you from, it's like the brakes on your car, you need them, but you can't drive with a brake on. And so, you need to manage it, but, and it can help you to do better work. It can help you when you bring it in at the appropriate time. The thing we don't want is a judge coming in early. I equate it with baking a cake. You don't want to keep checking the oven, opening the door, to see if it's done, and testing it and doing that. You want to wait until the idea has had a chance to develop. You've had a chance to refine it a bit, but the editing of it has a place. And so we do need that critical faculty. We just need to be able to control and manage it, like a lot of things in our lives. And also, we need to stop it from making us miserable and defeated and judging ourselves so harshly that we can't even get up to go to work at all. So, these are all sort of psychological issues, self-help, if you will, but I think they're part of the artist toolkit, is being able to manage your imagination, being able to manage your brain, be creative productively, to manage your perfectionism, to manage your procrastination, all these things that get in our way. What is a creative block? What is it truly? It's fear. It's fear of starting. That's so often I have people say to me, I bought a really nice, expensive sketchbook, but I'm afraid to ruin it by drawing in it. And I say, well, open it up in the middle and draw something there. It's just a sketchbook. You can buy another one. But if you don't start making stuff, you're never going to get anywhere. You're never going to get past it.
It's such a life lesson. Like, the first analogy comes to mind is, especially given that it's January, is all the people who decide to join the gym and who are afraid to get back into exercise. And there's a start a diet. I mean, there's 1,000,001 ways to look at that. And, I think doing it through art and creativity is a way not only to, control the monkey that's overseeing you perhaps when you're working on art, but on bigger things as well. So there's just so many life lessons in this. I am going to ask if you could share some of your whatevers, sketchbooks, whatever you decided.
I don't know if I would feel comfortable doing that.
I know that monkey.
They're not very
really
good.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's take the risk.
All right. I'll
And while you're doing that,
he even has a special
question,
camera.
well.
You're going to go to the dock cam or just hold it up? I knew it. Oh, look at this, sophisticated. I love it.
I do.
Anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask them now, and I will write them down and ask when we're done with this.
Yeah, so I had 2 sketchbooks I was going to go through quickly. This is one from this, as you can tell, the summer of 20. This is the sketchbook I kept at the beginning of the pandemic, when JJ and I accidentally moved to Phoenix, height of the thing. So this is sort of typical of the way my sketchbooks are. They are illustrated journals. They're documents of my life. So in this case, it is a drawing of every chair in the house that we moved into that was furnished, but we didn't own any of the furnishing. So I drew every chair and wrote about each chair. This is just commenting on the fact that the weather is insane here, Phoenix. This is the effect that it had on my feet. Here are the pomegranate trees that grow in our backyard, which were new to me. Here's the quails. As you can see, there's a lot of writing with all this stuff because I believe I'm a writer.
Why do you think you weren't using any color?
I think it's interesting too, because the world was ending. So yeah, so here are the birds that sit on, these are pigeons, doves. Here I am floating in our swimming pool. And
Proof that you're now in the water and got
Yes.
over the fear of swimming.
Well, I'm wearing
Yeah, he's got a
floating.
flotation device.
A
in
huge
that.
flotation
You know,
device.
JJ forced me to take swimming lessons. This is all the different type brands of suntan lotion, and there's me looking suntanned. There's our house. But again, as you can see, lots of writing here, and it's an important part of it. Me missing New York.
Do you want to talk about why you use a pen and not a pencil?
Yeah, I'll talk about that. This is our family, my sister-in-law's corgi Marley, since deceased. Here I am counting out the number of days that we've been, 107th day since we left home, and we'd gone through, I think, 3 tubes of toothpaste. So I was kind of counting out my life in toothpaste tubes. But then suddenly
Color.
started to get color. Yeah, drawing lovebirds, self-portraits. Here I am with various masks. More another self-portrait, hummingbirds. I was drawing a self-portrait every day to kind of just capture how I was feeling, various stuff that I was
Oh, it's Shrek.
buying.
Look, it's Shrek.
Shrek. Yes, here I am being less Shrek-like. This is one of the classes that we taught on how to draw birds with a ballpoint pen. Another self-portrait, another self-portrait. This is a way of checking in with myself, is drawing self-portraits, because they're always different. Zooming with a friend. We didn't have a dog yet, and we were contemplating getting a dog, so we were drawing different kinds of dogs. Managed to cut my head and got a new pair of glasses. Do this quite a lot, drawing food. So drawing a sandwich and all the stuff around it. These are things, reasons to be thankful. So yeah, so things are getting more colorful, getting kind of more used to this new life that we were living. We went on our first road trip, and a little map of that. This is an early Spark class, and all the different people on Zoom. And
Excuse me.
yeah, who are glamping, and
I remember when you did that drawing of that piece of wood.
yeah. Oh, this piece of wood, yeah, this tree.
We were right on the edge of the
Spectacular.
Grand Canyon.
Yeah. And here's another. These are just sort of northern Arizona mountains and landscape. Here's this cabin that we were staying in, different kinds of barbed wire. So another butte.
I'm struck with how different this is than New York City, where you were.
Oh yeah, it's very different.
Yeah, no barbed
We were
wire.
going back to New York actually, and going on a plane with all the various things strapped to my skull. These are memories of things from when I was a kid that I liked, candies
love it.
and food and stuff like that.
You like to draw little collections of things.
Yeah.
That's a typical thing that you will do.
I like sort of things in a category like shoes.
But I think that's also when you can't think of something else to draw.
Yeah, I just draw
It's a
bunch
really
of
good
things.
prompt, just anything can be a collection of things.
After I took your class, I never opened the refrigerator thinking about eating. I opened the refrigerator thinking about drawing a shelf.
I wish I could say the same. Yeah. So that's when we got our dog Twiglet. Oh, here comes Twiglet. And this is Day of the Dead. And this is a skeleton of a bird. So you can see all kinds of things. Do you want to pick her up?
I'm
And
the
yeah, so
microphone.
that's one. Shall I go through another one quickly?
Sure.
Why not? What the
A
heck?
few comments here. Amazing tree, loving the self-portraits, the sketchy diary style. Love the grid of dogs. You are amazing. It's like a history sketchbook. Love all the drawings of your surroundings. Phoenix is a little toasty sometime. That cabin, I spotted twiglets.
Yes, there's Twiglet.
And that's what we named our dog. This is Twiglet.
That's
Yeah.
Twiglet. This is a diary from a trip that JJ and I took where we drove from Los Angeles to New York City. And these are all the things we drew. These are the different maps, the different states that we went through, or we didn't go through actually. So scenes from the road, from the rear view mirror.
Is that the Roadrunner there?
That's a Roadrunner that we saw, our first Roadrunner. JJ almost ran over that runway. But it's recorded here, 194 miles we've driven. This is the Grand Canyon. And here's another pile of southwestern rocks.
Sedona.
Sedona.
A most
Gosh,
beautiful place.
It's beautiful.
Highly
Gorgeous.
recommend.
This is the night sky. The sky in the west is so
I
beautiful.
always loved this drawing. It was so, I thought it was really inventive.
To this abandoned camp of some kind, drank some beer in Albuquerque. When we were in Albuquerque, we went to, if you've ever watched Breaking Bad, you might recognize Walter White's house
We went to Albuquerque
explicitly to see
specifically
to see
to
the
go to
house.
Walter White's house.
and we met the woman who lives there, and it was very
An awesome New Yorker.
yeah. So I wrote about Walter White. Here we are. Here's the interior of our car. As we hit Texas, we went to Marfa, where there's a little Prada store. Here we are in
Marfa is a very cool artistic place.
that's Hatch, New Mexico.
Oh yeah, they had all those robots right on the side
Yeah,
of the road.
this is Marfa, a barn there, Donald Judd art, food trucks, and here's the big open road.
Mm,
Here's
Captured
stuff
very
on
well.
the road. Yeah, this is West Texas.
It took forever.
Road signs and not much else. And then we're on Route 66, and where did we go to? Okay, and here in Hope, Arkansas, birthplace of Bill Clinton, Hot Springs, Nashville.
Oh, we love Nashville.
And Nashville is great.
Good eating in
The
Nashville.
Johnny Cash Museum and architecture. These are necks of various musical instruments in the Country Music Hall of Fame. And we met these guys who do the Hatch printers.
Show print.
Show print. They stamp my book here. This is the Dairy Queen. Heading into Virginia. Jesus is Lord, we sell guns. And here's our car. Kind of breakdown of the car. It didn't break down, fortunately. Talking about different radio stations we listened to, lining up in Monticello and Maryland, and then finally home in New York. So yeah, that was that sketchbook. So that's a travel sketchbook. I love doing travel sketchbooks. I've traveled all over the world. I've done sketchbooks in China and the Middle East and across Europe. And there are all kinds of experiences like that. So yeah, there's that.
That's really wonderful. For those people out there who don't know your style and your approach, those are such perfect examples because everything comes from your life and your surroundings that I've seen you do, and has such personal meaning. You're not sketching a bowl of fruit that you set up. You're just sketching from the reality, and so meaningful. And I think people are seeing that in the comments that they wrote. Someone did have a question. You sketch and write in ink, which JJ mentioned before. Do you make mistakes or things you don't like, and how do you deal with that?
I have never made a mistake in 25 years. Not yet. We'll see what happens. No, mistakes. What is a mistake? A mistake is maybe you were hasty. Maybe you weren't, really paying attention when you were drawing. It's like writing. If you're writing something and do you make a mistake, or do you decide, I want to change that word to another word? Cross it out, you write the other word above it. There's no reason you can't do that with a drawing as well. There's no reason that you can't revise as you go. And the revision isn't necessarily something to be ashamed of, because you're not perfect.
Or it might be like an inner truth coming out.
Yeah, it might be another layer of realization. And you might say, oh, I saw this other thing I missed the first time.
Did you always work in ink, or when you started, did you start with pencil?
I think if you are learning to draw, you should not use a pencil for 2 or 3 years. Or longer. Honestly, if you draw with a pen, it will force you to commit to what you're doing. Slow down and don't erase, because pencils aren't the problem. Erasers are the problem, because erasers allow you
I gotta write that down. I gotta write that
down. Write it in pen. Because the problem is that you're not committed going in. You're hesitant. You're saying, I can Command Z. I can backspace my way out. But if you are committed to what you're doing, you'll get better at it.
I love this, and I never connected this until you said that. But when I teach collage and I talk about collage, I say I divide people into 2 categories. You're either a collage committer or you're a collage auditioner. The collage committer puts out a layer, a line, glues it down. You got to figure out what to do next. There's no going back. The auditioner is the one who lays it all out, moves it around, changes it, forgets, where they put it, moves it again, and may not even end up with something in the end. And for me, approaching it as a collage committer has just changed the way I create. And I don't know why I never connected it to what you've spoken about.
But paradoxically, you're a huge advocate of drawing on the iPad.
Yeah, I like to draw on the iPad. I think
you do erase. Constantly erase there.
I do, but I've also been drawing for a long time, so I didn't start drawing on the. I don't think the iPad's a great place to start drawing. It's a layer between you and your drawing that I think you can get to as you've drawn more. But I would say start with just a pen and a cheap piece of paper.
Copy paper.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter how you're starting with, because most of what you do is going to be crap. Don't throw it away though. Keep it, because it will be a reminder of how far you've come. And that's really important to know, so that when you've been doing it for a year, you go, look at this. This has been worthwhile because I've really evolved. Think about it like cooking. Like if you're cooking something and say you put in a certain spice, and then you taste it and you go, I'm not sure about that. What do? Do you throw the dish away? Or do you say, well, let me correct it by putting in something else? And let me remember that the next time I do this, don't put in so much of that thing. Right. So you're problem solving, you're learning, you're adjusting, you're correcting. You're not or pretending it never happened. And that's the problem with an eraser, is you just say, well, I don't want anybody to know that I made that error in judgment. But maybe it wasn't an error in judgment, maybe it was a lesson, maybe it was an experiment, maybe it was, you saw my drawings. My drawings are not perfect. They don't look like photographs. They're often potentially embarrassing, but like a lot of things in life, if you commit it, that's good. Like you seem strong. You seem, you can look attractive. You can have a giant nose, but you can look attractive because you carry it off. And that's true of making art as well, is believe in yourself. Don't stutter and stammer with your drawing lines. Don't do shaggy, approximations. Scritchy scratch. You do 30 lines and you figure one of them is probably right. No, just put a line down and then live with it, deal with it. If it's off.
Life lesson. Question for you. How do you start drawing if you're a beginner? Blind contour drawings, basic shapes?
If you want to. I think just look at something and draw it. Look at something and draw it. It will not be right, but then figure out, well, what should I have done differently? Then look at something else and draw it again.
I think you need to clarify what you mean by look at something.
Okay, so when you look at something, take this cup, right? So if you take a cup and you put it on a table, what is the shape of the bottom of the cup? Is it a straight line like that? Or is it a curve like that? Look at the bottom here. So start observing those kinds of things. How big is the hole in the mug, in the handle? How thick is it? How much of it can you see? How much of the inside can you see? All these things are observation that are different than you think you see. So you have to look, and you have to really evaluate what you're looking at. And and your hand will pretty much track with what your brain and your eye are observing. It's a miraculous thing. You don't really need to tell your hand. You just need to tell your eye and your brain need to work together. And your hand, it's like a printer and a computer. It will print out what is going on in your head.
Well, and you need to slow down.
You need to slow down so that you're really thinking and judging everything as you go. And do it repeatedly. Keep asking yourself questions. How does this line up with that? How much of an angle is there? All those things. Ask yourself those things. And over time, they will become second nature. You're not going to always do that. But it's kind of like if you were learning to walk, right? When you're first learning to walk, theoretically, you might be thinking, I need to lift my leg. I need to angle my heel. I need to do all these things. But after a while, you just don't think about it. Learning to draw and to drive is an analogy I use a lot. You think about when you first learned to drive, how you slammed the brakes on, how you drove your dad to distraction with, putting on the windshield wipers instead of the turn indicator, all these things that you made mistakes doing. You couldn't parallel park. You couldn't understand all those things. Now you just do it without thinking about it.
It's learning a musical instrument. It's learning a dance. It's all of that. It's something we've all done. It's a motor skill, really.
Right. Tying your shoe, brushing your teeth, all these things, we learn to do it, but we've done them over and over again. And you did them wrong, and then you do them right. I guarantee you the first ones you do will suck. They're supposed to.
It's a guarantee. You heard that, people. So you're right on the right track.
I would say be very concerned if you do a perfect drawing the first time. There's something going on.
Yeah, and you should retire if that's the case.
Doctor, yeah.
My sister, true story. My sister once played golf on a par 3. Her first time playing golf, hit a hole in one. And she was like, I'm done. Done here.
Count that.
Yeah, it was over. Game done. Never played golf again. Literally legendary story. Like came, went, nailed it, done.
One and done. We're going to wind down in a couple minutes. I did have another question from Tracy. Painters often use the term draw shoes, not things. Does this apply in sketching?
Draw shoes, not things.
I mean, Danny does love his shoes. Let me tell you, in my class I took with him, I have so many sneaker drawings everywhere. Tracy, do you want to
really understand what that means? But
could you share a little more detail on that? And then if anyone else has a question, speak now or type now, because we're going to be moving on soon. Shapes.
Oh, draw shapes, not things. Yes. I guess so. When we draw the outlines of things generally. I think if you look at a thing and you can figure out what its component shapes are, that is really the way to draw it. Draw something and draw the thing next to it, or draw the thing above it and below it and around it. So if you're drawing some people will draw, if you want to draw a building, you'll do a loose sketch of the whole building, and then you'll go in and draw details. I personally will draw a window. Then I'll draw the window next to it, the one above, below, and then eventually you'll have a building. So there are different approaches, but I think, it is about having some kind of a strategy. I tend to start, for instance, always in the upper left-hand side because I'm right-handed, and I work my way down that way. So there's a lot of things to think about and to learn, and your own style of doing it is key to this. There isn't a way of doing it. There's your way of doing it, and you can figure that out if you allow yourself to do it.
That's a gem. There isn't a way of doing it. It's your way of doing it. Question for you. A couple. I'm going to throw both questions out. Did Danny and JJ meet through art? Danny, what is your favorite quotes? Where do we start in Danny's program? How do you draw abstractly? That's probably not going to be a one-line answer, but
the answer to all of them is yes. I would say, look, tomorrow, come and join me for Draw With Me. JJ and I do this show.
We didn't talk about what Draw With Me was.
Yeah, we do a show on YouTube at 9 a.m. Pacific. Come to the Sketchbook Skool channel on YouTube and spend an hour drawing with us. We're going to be celebrating Edgar Allan Poe's birthday tomorrow, and come and draw with us, and a whole bunch of other people, some of whom have been drawing for years, some who are just starting today. Come with us, join us, hang out. We'll do this for an hour, and we do it every Thursday. That's how you should start. Come and do that.
It's free.
It's free. It's free. It's easy. It's fun. You don't have to tell anybody
The
you're
link
doing
has
it.
been
It's silly.
entered,
It's
so
silly
you
fun.
have no
We have-
excuse, people.
Sorry?
Oh, somebody typed in the link already to YouTube, so I said people have
Ah.
no excuse not to go now.
Exactly. Yeah. And also, I do teach a class called How to Draw Without Talent. I also wrote a book by the same name. That'll teach you some stuff. If you feel the need to buy books or write stuff or take a class, you can do that. But honestly, come to draw with me. And in the meantime, while you're waiting, draw your shoe. Draw your shoe, draw it a couple times.
Or a
And-
collection of shoes.
Or a collection of shoes, or draw Seth. There's all kinds of things. Just draw anything, keep drawing it. Don't worry about what you don't know. Promise
Well, just have
that's all.
fun.
Just have fun,
Just have
try
fun.
it. Try it, you will figure it out. You will. You knew how to do it when you were 5. You still do. Just let yourself try it. That's all I can
Yeah,
say.
and for those of you who are intimidated by the word sketching or drawing, just call it mark making or doodling. Because really, when you make marks, you're approaching things in a very similar way. You're just letting go. You're doing what your brain is telling your hands, and people just get so intimidated by the names sometimes.
It's paper's cheap and pens are cheap. You can get them for free. Just don't worry about it.
Before we sign off, anything that you two would like to share at all that you haven't?
I write an essay every week. It's free also. And I send it out every Friday. And if you go to dannysessays.com, you can sign up for it. I talk about a lot of these things in that, and I send them out every Friday.
And it's free.
And it's free. Did I say it was free?
It's free.
It's free to you. It's free to all fans of Seth Apter.
Yes,
And
everyone
yeah,
else.
and
There-
I also
there,
have a
we're-
podcast too. So if you feel like listening to a podcast, you can go find that out too.
How do we get Seth to commit to being on your podcast? Can we pressure him while he's got to make a commitment now? Public is
Well,
watching.
if you want me to come back, because I already was on the
He
podcast.
was on the podcast. JJ doesn't listen
Do
to the
we have
podcast.
link to that?
JJ
Does
does-
She was
Seth
behind the
audience
scenes,
know?
so focused. She didn't even realize it was me.
It's also on our YouTube channel, so you can watch Seth talk if you're into that.
Yeah, and actually, if you go to sethapter.com, the link is still on my homepage to
Okay.
either the podcast and the YouTube version. People already signed up. Lots of people, by the way, said throughout this, I have been in Sketchbook Skool since day one. Somebody said I was in
Aw.
Sketchbook Skool since day one and drew a lot of toast. So that person gets it.
Or toast.
I want to thank you guys so much for taking this much time out. I know you both work so hard, and I really appreciate you taking the time. And I just
No, we love you, Seth, and we're glad to be part of anything you're a part of.
To be
Yeah.
invited.
Yeah, totally.
It's right back at you. You two are such special people. I not that I saw you that much in New York, but I do miss you in New York. I just have to leave with one question. Danny, is there anything like really about New York, whether it's a bagel or a pizza or anything that you really, really miss?
Indian food.
Oh, we
Indian
cannot
food,
get
okay.
food here. It's a tragedy.
If you're Indian, please move to Phoenix and open a restaurant.
Please. It's
Please.
our favorite cuisine. No, I would say we miss museums. We miss
our friends.
our friends. We miss museums. A friend is actually here visiting from New York City, and she said they just happened to be in the West Village, walking by the Whitney, and it, for whatever reason, was open late at night, and they just got so lucky to stroll in and see the whole Hopper exhibit. And
Yeah.
I think I
felt.
Got a tear in your eye.
that. I miss that.
I know. So if you're in New York and you haven't gone to the Whitney to see the Hopper show,
Run.
you should get to do it. Man.
Yeah, do it for us. Do it for us.
Yeah, and if anyone does it, sketch something and send it over to Danny and JJ.
You don't have to. Just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Seth.
Bye.
You all
Bye.
take care. See you on the flip side.
See you
Arrivederci.
soon.
And thank you, everybody who watched. I appreciate you taking the time to spend it with me and with my guests. Everybody have a beautiful day. Stay tuned for the next interview. It'll be good too. Take care, everybody. Bye now.